join together in a moment of silence in honor of all those men and women of our armed forces and other agencies of our federal government who are serving us throughout the world. Thank you. We have an agenda for approval, council.
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We have an agenda. Consent agenda is the minutes from the Tarrant County tax pickups and releases. There's no question, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
We have a second? Second. We have a second. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Leo, you're the only public. Did you sign up?
No, I don't have anything.
Under tab 2, we have a correction to previous budget amendment, and we turn to the town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Last time I presented to you a recommended budget amendment for the Tall Pine Bridge. I had requested that of the finance officer, and I made, basically it was an error in the budget amendment. We did not put in the reimbursable amount that's coming back from the state to reimburse us, which is that portion being the 199, 985, and that was not on the previous budget amendment. This budget amendment, even though these figures do not match up with the figure I just told you, it does equal out in the math, and it corrects what we did before. So this budget amendment would account for the entire grant money coming back to the town through DOT and our portion of the expenditure, the upgraded expenditure, is what this budget amendment will do. It will correct what we did last time.
Does this amendment, in effect, negate, cancel out?
Yes, this amendment will take precedence over the previous amendment, and this will fix that. So I recommend that council adopt this. Finance officer's here if there's any questions of her as well.
When it shows decreasing the undesignated fund balance, that's just a bookkeeping process, I kind of thought.
Because basically what we have done for those amendments, for the previous amendment plus this one, we have taken the revenue side of the amendment from the fund balance. So basically what this will do, this will put the money back into fund balance and show it as a revenue source from grant fund.
Wait, now you confused me. This says we're decreasing the
Right.
fund balance.
Right, which means that,
Yeah, I know the balancing off that, but you said this means what did you just say? We're taking out from the undesignated?
the last budget amendment that we did took the revenue side of the expense from fund balance. And if you'll notice on there, the first one that I entered, the 49,000, whatever that
Right.
amount is, also takes it from fund balance to show the amount, equal to the expense. So what I have done, the reimbursable amount, the 199, we will decrease the use of undesignated fund balance by that amount, which means
Okay.
we won't use that amount.
Okay.
Because we'll be getting the money reimbursed.
That makes sense, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
That's all fine and good. Could we just run through the synopsis of this money? We originally put in 150,000, correct? And that was because we thought that the engineering firm would cost only 150, now they cost 199,000.
That's correct.
And so therefore, that's the 199,000, and we'll get 80% of that back.
That's correct.
Bookkeeping, I'm so glad I'm not.
And
bookkeeping.
then our portion, expenditure is 49,746. It increased from 30,000 to 49,746.
So Peter, the actual total expense is like $240-some thousand, and then the reimbursable amount is $199.
That's correct. That is correct.
40,000 for the engineering firm?
199,985 plus 49,746 is the total amount of the project.
That's right.
199,985 gets reimbursed to us, and we would be obligated for 49,746.
And the engineering firm costs 199,000?
No, the engineer firm cost the combination 199,985 plus 49,746.
They got a raise.
As I discussed last time, that 200 is less than the two bridges they're designing now in eastern North Carolina, which are around 300,000, similar bridges.
Okay. All right.
Because the original one was an estimate. This is when they really started looking at it.
Yes.
The costs changed. Okay. I move we approve budget amendment number 6.
I'll second. Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Amendment done. Town manager, construction, demolition, debris, transfer initiative.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is a continuation of discussion from previous meeting. And I think the only issue, concern that's outstanding to initiate this project is whether council would like for individuals who use this utility to pay a $50 fee per load to dump, or does the town absorb that $50 fee? It will be done by a permit system, and that's the question, I think, before council. If the town funds it, we would need to, I would suggest a budget amendment in the amount of $5,000. I have no idea how much of that would be used, but just to start the utility. If we don't pay for it, the individual would come in and pay to the town of Southern Shores $50 for a one-time permit, and that would be given to the town of Kitty Hawk upon invoice. So that, I believe, is the question before council.
Well, when we discussed this the last time, or the last meeting, I was not here the last meeting, so when we discussed this the last time, I recalled as being a general consensus that we weren't interested in doing this. I can say I am very definitely not interested in having the town pay for something like this. I have mixed feelings with the method they're coming up with having the individual pay for it, because even with this proposal, the town has some expense, because this stuff is flowing through the town, so there's a certain amount of expense involved. And I guess I just question that from the standpoint of, we really just haven't had a problem with this issue.
I will respond that, again, Town Hall has not had an inquiry. Now, just individual council members and citizens may have, but Town Hall has not had an inquiry about why aren't we providing this service.
Well, I certainly wouldn't want the town to be picking up these expenses. This is different from trash, garbage, recycling.
Well, it's not just C&D. It's also furnishings and things like that. Granted, periodically, we do have a large item pickup. Council members and past discussions have indicated that we don't see the need, we don't understand what the need is, if there is one. My feeling is that there is a need. What I would like to see is for an experimental period of, the rest of the fiscal year, that the citizens be allowed to pick up a permit and pay themselves, so that we can see if this is a process that actually is necessary. If there's no response from the community, then there is no need. I would just like to see it at least done on an experimental basis. Then if it turns out to be something that is needed by the community, council could consider further whether it's something that the tax base needs to pay for or not.
I guess I would like to hear, when you say you see a need, what is the need that you see? Because I truly have not heard any questions. I know what the town manager had said.
Well, there was an obvious oversupply of such materials, which resulted in the removal of dumpsters prior to this, back in, I can't remember.
Yeah, it was a
what year
long
that
time ago, right?
Yeah. There have been citizens who have gone to Kitty Hawk, obviously, and attempted to leave material there, or have left material there, until it was discovered they weren't Kitty Hawk residents. Know of one resident that, he finally realized, wait a minute, I have a vacant lot in Kitty Hawk. So he went and talked to the town manager about it, and they let him take his stuff over there. Given what I have seen in the past, originally it was something that I felt we needed to deal with, but the way we dealt with it was simply to ignore it and eliminate any means of having that done. That's why I brought this up. And I have had citizens ask me, you know, if there's some way other than going to Manio that they could dispose of materials. Personally, given what I may or may be doing at my home, as far as any repairs, maintenance, replacements, that type of thing, there have been times when I would have thought, well, you know, it'd be worth $50 for me not to have to drive to Manio to dispose of something that I don't want here until the next large item pickup. I may be a unique individual, but I don't believe I'm so unique that there are others that do not wish to do that.
We're all unique.
Yes, we are all unique.
That's for sure.
Peter, is there any possibility that the town of Kitty Hawk and the individual who wants to dump over there could negotiate their own terms and you know, just instead of going through the town, just go directly to the Kitty Hawk dump and get a permit and pay $50 there if they're not a resident?
That was discussed in our summit meeting, and town of Kitty Hawk prefers not to handle money coming from an outsider, an outside resident. They prefer not to do that. And especially on the site, they don't want to handle the
Yeah,
money
they
on
want
the
the
site.
individual handle, but they'll bill us.
That's right, they would
So
bill
we have to
us.
get involved in.
We have to get involved, create a permit system. Bonnie has to do journal entries, et cetera, in the budget.
Well, I agree with Hal. I partially agree with Jody, and I agree with you.
Flexible.
So I feel like Solomon, you know, bring out the baby and give me a sword. I really see no problem in trying it out. I mean, that at least give us, give us an idea as to is indeed there an issue, or how big is the issue? Is the issue big enough that people would rather pay $50 than wait for the number of large item pickups we have now, which is what, 3 grand total now we have?
2 a year.
2 a year, so, I mean, I've got 2 rolls of carpet sitting out in my back porch that I'm not about to pay $50 to go cart over to Kitty Hawk. I'll wait till large item and dump it out in the street. So, I'm game to see, at least we'll settle the issue as to whether anybody shows up and wants to pay the $50. If by the end of the fiscal year, nobody shows up, it's 1 permit, then okay, we leave it alone that way. But if 100 show up, then we got another issue. But if 1, we go find out. I mean, not really costing us really anything other than to, hell, we can make a permit out on a computer and don't have to bind it. Just make one out on a piece of paper and run a copy, and that's it, done, with a signature and a seal. So, I don't see a big problem about it. And then we'll settle the question once and for all. So, that's my 2 cents.
The procedure should be as simple as making the receipt for the money, the permit itself, and moving on from there.
If council votes to authorize this service, or even on a temporary basis, we would, with the town of Duck, come up with a joint piece of paper permit. It would be the plan.
Is Duck moving forward with it, even on a temporary basis?
Yes, as I understand it, they are, yes.
And what would be the any issue if we make a motion that says that we would agree to try this experiment between now and the end of the year?
The end of the fiscal year. There would be no issue. I would just come back and report at the June workshop meeting and report to council on how many permits we sold and if there have been any problems.
So the fiscal year is like 3-4 months from now.
And this
And
would,
it's during the time when the homeowners are here and people are doing work, getting ready, and large pickup items are.
if council votes to approve it, we would start it, the projected start date would be March 1st.
It's 3 months.
Would you like to make a motion to effect that?
I'd like to see a longer period than 3 months, but it does cover that period when our out-of-town owners are here. Yeah, I'd like to move that we do it on a trial basis till the end of the fiscal year. Offer the service as described with prepayment from the property owner to obtain a permit. I don't know, is there anything further that I should add to that motion?
I think that would cover it.
I'll second it.
Talk about it any further? I see some heads shaking no. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Bring on the garbage.
We will need to let the citizens know that the service is available.
Yeah, it will be broadcast on the broadcast news, and, we can put a banner on the website, see if that gets any attention.
Okay, thank you.
We have a draft ordinance amendment pertaining to the cemeteries. And to give us a background on that, Mr. Wes Haskins.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, can I interrupt 1 second? There was a person that was signed up for public comment, and she has to leave for another meeting, and I'm sorry I didn't bring that, I just got notified of that.
I'm sorry.
Is that okay?
You came in after.
Well, I actually came at 8 because the newspaper said public comment was at 8.
Oh, boy.
And then when I came back, I was late.
I was glad to hear from you,
Okay.
especially what you're coming with this.
And where shall I stand?
Stand right.
Okay, good morning. I'm Joan Liston. I'm with the League of Women Voters. Mayor, council people. This is our annual Citizens Guide. It's our 2013 complimentary copy for all of you. I'll leave some more over in the town hall office. We've been doing this since 1988, and it features government business offices throughout the county, plus other places that we'll distribute. We would like to acknowledge the municipalities and local business that contributed generously toward our publication expenses and acknowledge the support of the many employees who provide those updated information that's updated every single year. So if you flip your booklet over, you'll see some of the donors, and you are one of them. Our guide is published under the auspices of the State League of Women Voters Citizens Education Foundation. It provides names, addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses for national, state, county, and municipality officials. Additionally, the guide has information on governmentally funded recreation areas and services, local attractions, voting information, and emergency numbers. 6,500 copies of the guide are being distributed by the league members from Duck to Harris Village, Roanoke Island, and mainland Dare County. They are now available in libraries, post offices, Ballman, Fessenden centers, as well as all the town and county offices. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Publishing the guide is part of our continued commitment to provide pertinent information to our community's voters. Membership is open to both men and women. All are welcome. And thank you very much for your annual support.
Thank you, Joan, for coming to see.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I find it to be a very valuable reference. Carry one in my truck and one in my briefcase, keep one at home.
That's wonderful.
Now we turn to town planner, Mr. Haskett, Wes Haskett.
Thank you.
Lead us through this.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Not much background to provide you this morning on this text amendment request to the cemetery ordinance. There's one minor change that's being proposed on page 2. You should have received in your packets, lines 39 and 40, which basically we're removing language that states, "and upon approval of the town council," when referring to request or upon request of a certificate holder, certificate being a certificate of burial rights. It would not have to go through town council for you all's approval for that to take place. So upon or after removing it, it would be at the discretion of the town manager. And this was discussed at the last council meeting, so if there are any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer those for you.
Do your motion to approve.
I move that we approve.
It's okay, it's all right.
I was giving the cemetery
You're doing
Oh, you can
fine.
give him credit. No, go ahead.
Our cemetery
I
keeper, he
just saw you
can,
looking this way, so.
It doesn't make
Be
any
my
difference.
guest. No, don't
I make a motion to approve draft 2013-02-01, I guess lines 39 and 40 to read, upon request of the certificate holder, the town may purchase back the cemetery plots, amending this particular ordinance.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Is there any discussion on this? Everybody ready for a vote? All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Planner. You can mark that off as one of the least complicated budget ordinance amendments you've worked on this year so far. We turn to our manager who is with us to discuss next year's operating budget, fiscal year 14 operating budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In your book, I believe it's on tab 3,
Yes.
the blue sheet. Behind that is a copy of the current budget that we're operating under with all the amended portions that we've gone through during the year. So I just put that in for anybody's reference as I kind of talk through the bullet items that I wanted to bring to you. As you know, next month, Dare County Assessor will be presenting the schedule of values to the Board of Commissioners on, excuse me, not next month, but now, I'm sorry, February, the schedule of values for the new revaluation of property in Dare County. Tomorrow, we will learn the value that Southern Shores, the entire value for the town's tax base, effective January 1, 2013. With that figure, of course, we'll be working, Bonnie and I will be working to present to you what the revenue neutral rate would be based on this current year's budget, if we had to use the new value to present this budget to you. With that in mind, I wanted to just kind of go over some of the large ticket items that we have discussed either last budget year, planning session, or during the budget year that you all had either brought up in concept or we know we're going to have to address in this upcoming budget. Recall now that 1 penny on of our current tax rate is about $172,000. So 1 penny generates $172,000 under our current valuation. That'll change, of course, with the new valuation. We'll be coming up with a revenue neutral rate and a new 1 penny equals something different. But for now, I just wanted to go over a couple of items with you without a dollar amount out beside them, because tell you right now, I do not have dollar amounts yet, but we do have a concept. And I think you'll see, if we were to incorporate this into next year's budget, we would have to raise revenue to pay for some of these items. The first, of course, is the canal debt service. We're now working on the canal project. We have got bids going out this week to attract a contractor. We have a most qualified low bidder for the financial portion of the package that I will be bringing to you shortly. But we will be working towards getting a lowest, most qualified bidder by the end of April. We'll be working towards going toward the local government commission in May with not only that bidder, but also the finance package. And we'll be looking at closing on this whole entire arrangement by the end of May, so that a contractor can go ahead and start mobilizing midsummer in preparation to cut the dredge switch on in October. The debt service is going to be about $500,000 a year, as we discussed last year. We discussed that. When you adopted your budget last year, we all knew that was going to be a figure.
That's based on how much?
That's $3 million for 7 years. The debt service would be $500,000. So you divide that by 172, that tells you how much tax rate would have to accommodate for that $500,000. Now, I know we did raise the rate last year, and we put the extra funding in the capital reserve account, or capital reserve fund account, but $500,000 would be approximately 3.75 cents, I believe, on the current valuation. That's one item that we would have to consider in our budget planning. The next item we talked about last year as well is the invoice coming from Department of Transportation eventually for the Trinity Bridge improvements. Now, we have paid for some items on the Trinity Bridge, and we will pay for the actual repaving of the decking that we'll have to do very shortly. But the main part of that invoice, remember, was between $250,000 and $300,000. If that comes, that was not included in last year's budget. We had planned to just go ahead and present that as a budget amendment during the year. So that's an item that we would be looking at, presumably, very soon once we get invoiced. I can't tell you when they would invoice us, because that doesn't happen until the Department of Transportation does it, but that is out there. The other item that we would have next year, of course, is what we just did, is the Tall Pine Bridge match. Although we're going to be reimbursed $199, we're still going to have approximately the $49,000 Southern Shores portion of that to consider. Plus, we have to consider the cash flow, which would be a separate issue. We'd have to cash flow it out of our funds. I don't think that would be too great of a challenge, but the $49,000 would be something that we have to pay for. So that would be a ticket item next year as well. Yes, sir.
Put that in context of this budget amendment we just had. $49,000 we would have to pay for next year.
The budget amendment allows the engineering firm to begin work right now, and he'll start invoicing us.
Yeah.
Assuming he doesn't do anything between now and June. I don't know when he's going to start. We'll only pay for what he does this fiscal year. If he doesn't do anything until July 1, then we'll have to rebudget that amount again. So that's what I'm referring to. If we have to rebudget that entire amount.
Understand.
Okay. A couple of other items that have come up during the year in discussion that I wanted to just kind of alert the council to. A couple of these are general in nature. We don't have to go in closed session, but do involve the workforce. One would be, I would like to propose to the council during the budget planning session, the creation of a new position for the Public Works Department. And that is, I would like to propose to council to consider funding a Public Works Director / Special Projects Officer. That would be a position that would coordinate all of the major construction that we've got going on constantly in town, all the capital improvements that we have, taking care of the contracts, taking care of the bidding, and coordinating all that, plus supervising the public works workforce that's in place now, which would be considered maintenance and facilities. The current public works supervisor would continue in his exact same role. This would be just a position, a director who would be able to supervise that department, handle the budget on a day-by-day basis, handle all the special projects we have going on, including the construction, and then allow the public works supervisor to do the maintenance, the day-to-day maintenance with his two workers. I have tried that for 2.5 years now, and the staff and I have gone round and round and round about trying to find the best way to administer maintenance and the facilities maintenance portion. And it's just come down to, I would like to propose to you, I'm convinced that we need a position there to direct, handle the budget, handle all the contracting, purchasing, and handle the special projects, being the capital projects that we're ongoing. Next year, as you'll see in a minute, the capital improvement plan would consist of repairs on streets throughout the town, prioritized. It takes a good portion of my day, a good portion of my week, and a good portion of my month to step aside with the finance officer and with the accounting tech to work with the current public works supervisor. It's just, there's a void there that I think the town deserves to have a position that would be full-time to oversee that, all of that. That being the case,
Can I ask you one question?
yes, ma'am.
So that would also include like the Tall Pine Bridge?
All
project,
that.
All the projects?
All the projects would be coordinated by this public works director.
Okay.
Of course, I would be working with him, finance officer would be working with him, but it would be, he would have his actual own office, and he would be coordinating it day by day, the purchasing, the contracting, and the budgeting, and allow
What kind of person would this be? I mean, qualifications?
qualifications. It would be a 4-year degreed person who has experience, hopefully, in special project management, contracting, and purchasing. A couple of the municipalities on the beach now have that type of personnel position. One of them has several of those positions. But that's what I would propose. Following with that, the budget ticket on that would be somewhere around $100,000 with all the benefits, retirement, et cetera. We would be looking at a starting salary of somewhere around low 70s, 70 to 71, if council would entertain that as part of this budget. So all this will come back later when we, in budget planning, but I just want to throw these ideas out and kind of start this discussion on them. I'll give you food for thought. The other item is that town workers this year, in the past, I believe, since a certain date, Bonnie helped me, they have had a COLA, they have not had a merit pay. And can you tell me the year?
Off the top of my head, the last one we had was when Webb Fuller was here.
2008?
What is that? 7 or 8.
We can get into all the detailed differences of all the type raises, but the town employees have not had that type of a merit pay system installed in about, best I can tell, about 5 years. And that's where we evaluate employees, and they are rewarded for their good performance through merit. We did evaluations, of course, last year, and we had a little bit of merit, but we did not distribute that as merit. You authorized that. This true merit would come towards their base salary. I would like to propose to you this year a 2.5% merit which would be an expense of about $35,000. So that would come in the manager's proposed budget to you as well. And we can get into, at that time, all the differences and all that, but I have looked at it, and the finance officer and I have talked about it, and we feel like it's time that council consider at least doing that aside from the COLA. Last month, at last meeting, the town attorney was here, and you went into closed session on a legal matter. There is potential expense for the town in a legal matter next budget year. And you have all been briefed on that, and I believe you've been briefed on the potential for the cost of that. So that could be a budget item during the year that we would need to at least amend the budget to bring in from fund balance to pay for. So just wanted to make sure you had that on the radar screen as well. Now I get to the police department. As you know, all our department heads have been developing their budgets, and for the most part, I believe we will have a similar budget proposal from department heads as last year, with the exception of the police department. Before I begin in the workforce, the police chief, again, would like to propose for your consideration when we have our capital improvement discussion, a building behind the current police department. He has brought this up, I believe, at least 3 years since I've been here, maybe longer, 3 years. So I'd like to bring that to you again as a proposed capital improvement item aside from the street capital improvement matters. The cost of that, what he's proposing is about $110,000. It would not only be a garage, but it would be have a training space as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chief.
What was the number?
$110,000. With that, I would like to also, and Chief Cole is here, and I would like for him to jump in at any moment to help me explain what he and I together are going to propose to council as far as the budget. There will be proposed a salary increase adjustment for a current, a salary a line item in the salary line for a third sergeant's position. I believe Chief Cole has talked to council about this before. It would create three different basic, I'm calling them shifts, but three different patrol shifts. We would have sergeants for each of the three patrol shifts, which we do not have now. It would create a supervisor for a shift where one is not there now. He also would propose the creation of a corporal's position. And that corporal position would entail promotion of a current officer to the corporal position, and it would create the necessity for a $2,000 increase in the salary line. Am I saying it so far correctly? Okay. Okay. Those would be the new items that you'll see in the proposed budget, working budget. The rest of the shifting around in the police department, because it takes me a while to try to understand who's who and where everybody is going with vacancies and additions, the rest of it would be handled in the current budget, as I recall. Is that correct? So the two items that I've talked about, the new sergeant, which would be a total new salary, and then the creation of a corporal's position, which would entail promotion of one of the existing officers, would just entail a minor increase.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the same with the third sergeant.
And the third sergeant is a minimal increase as well, because it's already, that's going to be.
Okay, wait, let me back up, then I misspoke. So there would not be a whole new salary, it would be just an increase in a current salary. I'm sorry. So,
So the total number of people remain the same.
right, total number of people remain the same. I'm sorry, I misspoke on that.
Sergeant's badge. Also the sergeant's badge, that would be in there too.
Let the manager complete
Okay.
before we discuss in detail.
I have not received the fire department's proposed budget. My indication so far is that the fire department budget would be within the current budget. Basically, there would be no major request to increase the formulated amount of appropriation that would go to the fire department yet. I have not received it, but that's my initial talks. That could change until I receive it. So I just wanted to tell you that. I want to make sure I covered everything that I wanted to get out there to you. At some point prior to the April budget work session, I believe we would need to have a presentation from the current capital improvement committee, and this year's committee is the mayor, Councilmember Kowalski, Engineer Joe Anloff, and myself. And I just wanted to hand out to you what the initial projections of the committee are with our looking at street repair. No dollar signs, but I'm gonna pass these out, if you don't mind. And before I go down the list, I just wanted you to recall that there is a resolution of commitment from council to each year, I believe, that we devote, or yes, I use the term devote, 3 cents worth of rate income towards street improvements. That in mind, we don't know the cost of these yet. Mr. Anloff is pricing these. But this is a list of the prioritized hotspots that we found in the town, that the engineer and the committee felt were the priority sites. You can see, number 1, Bear Track Lane, Blue Peak Court, coming down the list, Clamshell Trail, Duckwoods Drive sections, East Holly Trail. Each one of them has different improvements out beside on the list. Fairway Drive, Gingite Trail, Hickory Trail, Hillcrest Drive, Hollow Beach Court, Live Oak Lane, Mistletoe Lane, Mizzen Mass Lane, North Dogwood Trail, North Duke Loop, Osprey Lane, Periwinkle Place, Pintail Court, Scuppernong Lane, South Dogwood Trail, Teal Court, the side entrance to the fire department there on Pintail, Wax Myrtle Trail comes off. We didn't find where that was on the old capital improvement plan. We didn't understand what the need was of that, so that would come off. Then Woodland Circle, Yopon Trail. And the second column, of course, describes the particulars of each area. We're certainly not talking about rebuilding or repaving those streets, but basically it's just the items that we're talking about there, and a description of the improvements. And the engineer is now pricing those.
So like number 9, Hickory Trail, which says complete, is because it was on the original plan.
That's
and we
right.
did do it, so-
That would come off too, excuse me. Yes,
No,
ma'am.
no, that's okay.
Thank you. So number 9 and number 24 and number 18
Yeah.
would come off. So everybody else would move up. Depending on what the cost of these are, that would be projected as a capital improvement plan to hopefully be paid for out of the 3 cents, as well as the capital item that Chief Cole is proposing for the police department. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
But the capital improvement committee has admit to prioritize.
Okay, they have not. You're correct, and I'm just waiting on the dollar amounts for us to get back together and meet, and then coming back to council and make a more formal presentation and reprioritize these according to cost and the committee's sentiments.
But
Yes, sir.
between now and April, would you be looking at the March?
I'm hoping if we get the dollars back, dollar amounts back, and I send these to Councilmember Kowalski and the mayor, I would hope that we could do it middle of March.
I know I've mentioned this particular, what you could call a hotspot to you a couple of times, and I'd ask you if you just could take a look at it. If it doesn't fit, that's fine, but that's the north side of the intersection at Hillcrest and Seos. And the only reason I keep mentioning it is it's very bumpy, but that's no big deal. But I know for a fact that the town has been down there fixing pothole after pothole after pothole. And then, you know, when it rains, the pothole needs to be replaced. If you have a record of that, does it make sense to just cut out that piece and fix it? I guess would be my only question. And if it doesn't, fine. But I just know that we've been down there any number of times replacing it, even sometimes more than once a year. So if we just take a look at that.
I will.
We can discuss this in more detail.
Sure.
Yes, absolutely. I just wanted to bring this to you, that all these items that I just went over are items that, for your budget consideration. And I will reiterate that the current year's revenue would not pay for all these. So I guess I'm dancing around the white elephant. It would take a revenue increase to pay for all these items, i.e. a tax increase. So I
Can I
just
ask you
want,
one more question on this one? This current prioritization is based on the original, I want to make.
no, I think this is just a,
So it's just a list? it's
this,
not-
I think this, yeah, Mayor and George are right. This is just us, George, putting it together in a, actually, it's alphabetical.
Alphabet, okay. So
That's-
I'm
that's
gonna
all it
put
is.
not- I want to make my note to myself, it's not
Non-prioritized.
prioritized.
It's alphabetical.
Okay.
And you should also know that Duckwoods Drive has already been working on the plans, I guess, they're working on that, so that's a leftover one, yeah.
That's all.
Yes, sir.
I guess Honeysuckle's on here.
Have you completed your list of
I
subjects?
have, I did want to, in my manager's report, present the council with a couple of prices to consider on some projects that have been proffered to me during this current budget year, but I'll get to those in the manager's report, if that's okay. All these are for next year.
I would suggest that, council, that we discuss each of these major items that the manager's mentioned, in the order that he brought them to our attention, and see what develops. The first is the canal debt service, based on a estimate, I guess, of $3 million for 7 years at $500,000 a year. My question is, last I heard, it was 2.5, maybe. Do we have a better number?
I'm just, we're asking the bank to loan us $3 million to make sure we cover everything, is the only thing I can answer that. It was an estimate, and this would hopefully cover any kind of cost overruns or any unforeseen items that we have.
If it turned out, once we have the bid in hand, that it was $2 million, would our rate be adjusted
Probably so,
to higher?
probably so. I would guess it would be.
We have, at the close of business last fiscal year, an unrestricted fund balance of about 3.5 million. And by council action, we set a goal, this council, of a floor of 1.7 million for our unrestricted fund balance. My view has always been that we take from the people what we need. And if we have more than we need, we give it back to them in the way of services, or, heaven forbid, a tax decrease. But what I'd like to hear council talk about is drawing down that fund balance to cover a portion of the cost of phase 2 of dredging these canals. We could set, I know that we have an elephant in the room based on the legal matter that's before us. We don't know where that's going. But I think we have a pretty good idea of an upper limit on it. So those are the things that are rolling around in my mind with respect to this phase 2. And whether or not it really isn't prudent to draw down the fund balance to cover a portion of that fund. Therefore, drawing down the debt service.
Well, why not do both? Why not take the loan and use the fund balance to pay the loan off yearly?
That assumes that the fund balance remains available, I suppose. I don't know what the local government commission looks for in approving a loan like this, but they're certainly going to look at our fund balance.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, they would look at our fund balance and our ability to levy and collect taxes in the
Yeah.
town's current financial stability. I mean,
They
that,
look at
that
our-
is certainly, in other words, pull from fund balance each year to make the debt service payment. I mean, that's logical consideration. I mean, I think that would be.
I'd say it's 3.75 cents every year. Until, I mean, it's dependent, I mean, at least for a certain number of years, not knowing what it is, that would not be able to raise taxes on that.
But that would just defer, I think, an increase in taxes in order to cover the debt service because of the amount of pool that we have.
It may or may not, but it would also not deplete the fund balance in case something drastic happened. We would have a fund balance to deal with, at least it would reduce itself down. I mean, at some point in 4 years, we would, know what to do at that point. But if we want to draw, what's the total you want to draw, $2 million? Is it roughly $2 million that we want to take out of that fund balance, roughly?
No,
No, to
we
the
can't
canals.
take 2 million out of it,
It's 3.7 million, right?
3.5.
3.5, and you want to leave it 1.7?
1.75 is
propose
exactly
to
right.
use-
Right.
I would not propose to use all of that.
Okay, all right, I don't know.
I said a portion of it.
Of portion of the remainder of after 1.75?
A portion of the difference between 1.7, which is our bottom,
Right.
and 3.5, which is our actual at the close of business
Which
last
is
year.
1.75.
It also happens to be 175, so it's half of it.
Right, 1.75.
You also mentioned somewhere in your presentation about the facts, we increased taxes last year, which we did.
Mhm.
And then money was going into capital reserve. And it was kind of my understanding we were doing that, but that also could be used for this.
Yeah, that
Is that-
amount can be used towards that. I don't know what that amount would be. If we ran the budget this year on the new the new valuation with all these other things, I'm not sure you would have 2 cents cushion to put back into
But
capital reserve.
Is that what we have now? I guess I
Yeah,
was
one,
looking at-
how much is it, Bonnie, now?
We put 183,000 in there this year.
So that amount is
So there's
available to go
another amount,
towards,
yeah.
sure.
I guess we'll get into all that later when we talk about the whole CIP and everything else.
Mhm.
But I want to make sure that we consider the fact that that can be used for this as
Oh,
well,
yeah.
not just the roads and any
Sure.
other capital projects.
In this form of financing, is there a prepayment penalty?
The way that we are talking about negotiating, setting it up is that the entire amount would be put in escrow and we would use it and hopefully not use all of it. And then whatever's left, pay back towards the note to pay it off. Is how it would work. That's the way, we have not gotten down to brass tacks of,
Given everything else that we've got to consider, I think borrowing with a cushion is prudent. Because if we make decisions and spend some of that undesignated fund, for example, for some of these capital improvements, I wouldn't suggest that that's what we consider as far as personnel is concerned, because that's not a renewable asset, necessarily. You know, we could put ourselves in a bind if we don't borrow enough. That's what I would see. So I tend to agree with George in that if you can utilize the funds, if there's any left over, pay off principal, and then utilize anything else that we can come up with in the future as far as whether we indicate that we are going to use a portion of the undesignated funds or whatever. That's a better mix of possibilities.
I'd also like to say that, you know, for discussion, it's on for this, you know, y'all are discussing it now, but I would propose, unless you told me something different today, I would propose that, and that would come out of debt service, and anytime during the budget deliberations, you can direct me to pull fund balance into the budget.
If you get to the local government commission in May, it takes them a while usually, doesn't it?
They would vote on it that meeting.
Oh, they would?
Yes, sir. And we would close on it that
And
meeting.
we have plenty of time to address this issue before we come to a budget that we take to a public hearing.
I mean, we could always pay, you asked that question, but I believe, I'm confident we can pay principal down. I mean, we can negotiate, we're certainly in the middle of negotiating, but in other words,
But that doesn't necessarily mean the debt service amount would change until that's a question that would have to come up.
yeah, this is getting kind of pennies and dimes, I think, but we would have a contractor that's holding his price, waiting for the local government commission to approve it. So we need to go ahead and approve that contract at some point.
Yes.
And we can't approve that unless we have the loan or the money.
Yeah.
Either loan proceeds or fund balance.
What are we collecting interest on that? We have any interest on our $3.75 million, whatever it is?
It's confusing, but the money in that fund is between Finistar and the North Carolina Capital Management Trust. That's all of our money combined. So that fund is we're not making a whole lot of money. It probably makes $10 or $15 a month. I mean, are you talking about, no, the whole thing, the whole thing, probably, let's see, maybe $500, and then that is split between the general fund, the capital reserve fund, and the pension trust fund.
But on a percentage rate, it's less than
Less than one.
That rate must be less than
0.5.
half.
Less than
Yeah.
0.5.
Yeah, that's right. It's
Number
not
here.
making a whole lot of money.
Banks made a lot of money, but.
And what is the rate that you're negotiating?
Just a little bit less than 2%. I believe it's 1.72. 1.72.
1.72?
And is that 1.72 on the unpaid balance? In other words, if we do decide that we add an additional 300,000 to principal, and now it's gone down, is the 1.72 just flat and never changes?
At this point it is, but I mean, I can try to negotiate with them.
Because I think that's where the penalty we can, like, prepay it down. comes
Either-
in.
Take off the
either
principal,
penalty-
it reduces your payment, right?
Well, no, it depends how it's written up.
Yeah.
If it's on the basis you pay 1.72% on the unpaid balance,
But
then
these
that's
are,
one thing. But
but-
if the initial contract is 1.72 per year, no matter
Right.
what,
Yes, Jody, but in council, don't we have to, shouldn't we just rely on the town manager's skill as a negotiator
Yes,
to work
absolutely.
this
but-
out. We can't solve that.
No, but it answers, to me, it adds fit to the question that you're asking of how much we borrow, where we put it, what's the impact, it's the long term.
But
so-
strategically, you need to count on $500,000 a year of debt service.
Yeah.
I mean, penny here, penny there, $20 here, 20, you just need to, for our discussions, I think you're safe in counting on
Right.
500 a year.
Yeah, I'm assuming he's gonna negotiate the best cotton picking deal we can come up with.
Yes. Yes.
Did I hear you say that the contractor for the dredging, before the, part of that contract, we would have to prove that we have the funds to pay for it, either through a fund balance or through a debt service?
That's correct.
So if we decided not to do the debt service, and encumbered the fund balance, it no longer becomes a fund balance.
That's right. It becomes designated encumbered fund balance, and we would be if we drew that much down, we'd be violating the LGC standard then for retaining enough undesignated fund balance in reserve, if we did that.
How long would it take to replenish it?
How long?
Yeah. I mean, could we?
I can't see that.
How much would it put back?
It would take an economy upswing of
Yeah, we put money
property.
back in. But if we put money back in,
Well, we got to get that revenue from somewhere. Unless you raise property taxes, we've got a flat economy right now with the occupancy, sales, and land transfer.
Yeah, the only way that the fund balance, undesignated fund balance increases is if we finish revenues over expenditures, which, you know, we always hope to do, but then you have hurricanes that come, this or that or the other, and you have to use fund balance, so.
Have you gotten any feel from the county yet on those other taxes as to where it's looking? Is it looking
No.
up or down or?
We won't see that formally, even the finance officer at the county won't even attempt that formally until he gets the new values, and then he'll typically do it during the, I believe during the, well, it's about right now, but he won't do it till after he gets the values. I mean, there has been an uptick in sales, no question,
Yeah.
of real estate. So the land transfer will be interesting to see what that comes out to be on the projections.
Yeah, I know in looking at some of the numbers now, I couldn't see the home sales, it is.
Well,
a
council,
little bit more.
won't we be having this whole discussion from now through the final approval or budget?
Mhm.
And I think what the town manager's heard the council say, we'll be discussing it, but we don't have any directions to give you at this time beyond what you have come forward with.
Yeah, at any time, even at budget approval, you can vote to move fund balance over to go
Yeah.
against debt service.
And some other thing may become clearer to us by that time. Shall we go on to the Trinity Bridge? I don't know if there's anything to say about it, except it's disgusting, the course it is taking. It's caused people a lot of annoyance.
I will have a comment on the paving portion in my manager's report for this budget year.
Okay.
Again,
Tall Pine Bridge, any point in discussing that further? We've been on it already this morning.
is there a window of time that we imagine they're gonna get it accomplished so they can get, you know, when you get to the point of getting through all your permitting and then design, et cetera? Is there compared to, you know, what they've done with other bridges,
15 months for this phase one
15 months?
is what we're hearing.
Okay.
We would have to go to contract to rebuild it within 15 months?
No, sir, we would have a design, permits, and right-of-way plan within 15 months. And then phase two would kick in after that, where we would put out for a contractor and an inspection engineering firm.
Is there a limit on the time between
There's not,
permitting and going to contract, doing the actual rebuild?
there's no limit on the time that we could impose, but obviously it would be gauged by the permit times as well. The permits would have expirations, but that would be it.
Yeah.
We're basically having to ride this as a grant program. We don't control a lot, but that's basically what we can control are the agreements. But we can't impose deadlines and all that as we would normally do during a contract. If we were selecting a contract and want to pay as go, if we paid 100%. So,
My impression is that the times are gonna take a lot longer than normally if we were just doing this ourselves. Just because
yes,
of the
absolutely.
agreement.
No question. And we explained that, I think, in the minutes before. This type of project is going to take a while.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions on Dalton? Anybody want to say anything more? The new position of Public Works Director. Comment?
I think the plan makes sense. I understand where you're coming from.
I understand the need also. I've seen the need for the last 2 years. In my view, it's time we do it. I throw that on the table.
Yep.
If we did it, I would propose that the position be housed in an office here in the town complex somewhere, and we have not gotten to that. I've kind of got some ideas batting around, but if we did get it approved, I feel like it would definitely need to be here at the town hall, this building, somewhere in this complex.
Well, I think, I tend to agree. I think that we need to adjust, and we promised the people that we would be doing a lot of infrastructural work, and we are doing a lot of infrastructural work where, thanks to Peter, we're getting money here and there and whatever we need to do. And I think at some point it gets so complicated with so many things coming down the pike as we roll one to the next, to the next, to the next. And for one person to try to gather it all up is kind of tough. I mean, especially even this list, we're missing one road over here. That's good, that's being done next, which is Honeysuckle, which is not on this list.
Right.
So I mean, it's just, and we have roads on this list that even shouldn't be here because they've been done already. So, so I mean, just simple stuff like that, and someone to be out there. And I would presume, now, this is the question that I have, would this person also be involved in dredging?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
so that would be, so then we got to dredge, we got to deal with all that, so now we got dredging on our hands too. So this person, I think, between dredging, between roads, between running the 3 other people to make sure they're getting everything done, it gets to the point that I could see them running around for 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, and not twiddling their thumbs. So it's something, and we'd have it orchestrated and controlled, and one person directly responsible and know exactly everything about each project. So I see this to be an important step to keep ourselves going in that realm. Even also a person who understands some of their budgetary situations here too, where the money is coming from, et cetera. So I see no problem with this.
I see no problem with
I think council is expecting you to include this in your
Okay.
budget.
Thank you,
I think there's a clear message there, sir.
thank you.
Merit raise. I think many of us in our lives before we came here dealt with these issues
Absolutely.
of how do you reward good performance, the value of rewarding outstanding performance. We have been quite conservative, I think, in what we've been doing for our employees over the last few years. I personally would like to see an amount. I don't know what the amount is. It's the manager judgment in this budget. It provides some merit raises. I'm wondering also if it isn't approaching the time that we update our payroll study, our outside group. When was the last time we did that?
We've gotten a draft in, you funded a the MAP study for this year, which is basically salary study. And Bonnie and I are still talking to the company, the consultant now, about the final. Actually met with her on Friday, so I'll have that version available for each council member probably in the next week, for you to review individually, is the way I think I propose it, and have it in the conference room for you to come in and just peruse that. So that's there, and you can glean that.
Based on what you've seen and know about that at this point in time, I know we haven't given anything but the COLA for a number of years. How do you think we're gonna come out? In other words, I'm thinking if we're talking here about 35,000, when you do a study, there's an expectation on the part of the employees that something's gonna happen as a result of that study. And I guess I'm trying to figure out what's the dollars. And I don't need specifically numbers.
Okay.
But is that going to be an increase even if we don't consider the merit?
No.
What's the kind of status?
The study came in saying that salaries were consistent with the market, et cetera.
Okay,
There
that's
was
good.
no
I'm glad to hear
recommendation
that.
to raise across the board of salaries to adjust or anything like
I'm
that.
glad to hear
It's
that.
to compare.
That's good to know. Okay.
As
Did
opposed
I
to
hear
the
you
last study.
saying there's no recommendation for any major salary adjustments?
Well, there was no recommendation to readjust the classes, et cetera, to reflect different pay grades and that kind of thing. Basically, the finding was that we were consistent with other local governments in the area as far as the basic pay salary classifications. The individual salaries, et cetera, there's not a common. Right.
Well, we've had situations before where a whole salary class had to have some changes.
That's right.
And that's what I was concerned about.
But on this, I will make a proposal, and council can consider at the time when we put it in for the working budget, draft working budget. So,
I think you should consider it. I think we're very lucky with the workers that we have, and I'd hate to see us lose them, so I think we should definitely consider it for something like this.
Yeah, I know I'm biased in making this statement, but it becomes evident, it seems like every week, that we are so lucky to have workers with the education and the training and the competency that we do have. And I think that's reflected when you just look at some of them and the work that they do. We're lucky.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It shows in the feedback that I'm getting from the public is very positive. I think we have the most outstanding staff, and I include the police department on the Outer Banks at this time. It's just superb. Chief Cole has done a marvelous job, in my view, of building a force, and the morale and the esprit de corps of the police department is really a joy for me to see from my perspective. And I get a lot of feedback from the people about how the police, the individual officers have handled given situations. And it's very pleasing to my ears to hear that. So, and I congratulate the chief on that. So I think you can come in with a merit increase. We may have more to say about it, but you addressed the legal matter.
Yes.
That is we don't know how that's going to move. We don't know when it's going to move. There's much more we can say about it. I don't think it's something that can be budgeted. We'll just handle it through a budget amendment, whatever the outcome is. Anybody dispute that? Okay. Police Chief, you might come and join us. Town manager's gonna be turning around to you. We'll save his neck. Pull up a chair.
Oh, you don't need it, promise.
You recall, council, last year that we had considerable savings in our operating accounts across all departments. And one of the leading departments in that regard was Chief Cole's Police Department, where he came in under budget of about 65 or 70,000, which is about 65 or 70% of the cost of this building he's asking for. And with that comment, I will be quiet for a minute. Any comment? We want to discuss it?
Discuss the building?
Yes, we want to probe a little bit. I think we want to probe a little bit, don't we?
Yeah, but I thought the CIP committee gets in that first, but that's okay. I don't know. I mean, I have nothing against the building. I have nothing against 80,000 for the building. I just see a whole lot of money, which I announced way back when I started rattling off the total amounts of dollars to hit us. There's a tremendous amount of money that we're talking about down the whole line and how to pay for this. So I don't know. I mean, I have no objections, but I have got to see the whole dollar amounts of it all in front of me and what the cost is gonna all be and what the tax rates are gonna be and everything else before I leap out and say, sure, we'll get a building, because it's a tough thing here between the road construction and everything else. I mean, it's a lot out there. And little thing like dredging and bridges, et cetera, that we gotta pay for, so I don't know. So I just see it that way. I'd love to see a building there, but I wanna see the whole big picture of the dollars.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. You've got to see the total budget. We'll act on it.
What do you see as being the benefit to the police department having this?
Well, what I am proposing is a replacement of the garage that you see out there with a 3-bay garage, nothing finished inside the garage. What we have now is we have a 2-bay garage with several $1,000s worth of equipment in it, and the garage is about ready to fall down. It's termite infested. So we're proposing a 3-bay garage, just like you see on the same footprint, but it'll become closer to the building, to the police department, with an upstairs for a training area, training room, and a bathroom, obviously, and shower type area, and also possibly a place for workout. We're the only police department on this beach that really has no place to train our own officers unless we fight with everybody on the calendar for the pit center, and you know as well as I do, it becomes interrupted, so on and so forth. We also don't have any facility to invite other departments here with the exception of using the pit center again, and that's if we can get it scheduled and there's no conflicts. We have several $1,000s worth of equipment that ends up either sitting outside or it sits inside of that garage, and we really need a more secure, larger facility, and I think the officers deserve that, to be very honest with you. And I applaud you for finally looking to better the infrastructure, which includes the buildings. So that's pretty much what our proposal is for the garage. I've asked for about 3 years now. We get by with trying to do the training and so on and so forth, but we have just gotten to the point where we really need it, and that's why we're requesting it.
I think the key word that you hit for me was the fact that it's infested with termites, so that the building may not be there in who knows when. And so to me, that's sort of like when you're looking at the roads, like, how do you compare that to maybe a crack in the shoulder of the road or something that you're planning to repair? You have to balance out that kind of need.
Yeah, and the problem it is now is when we get the heavy rains, the water comes right into the garage, so you can only put certain things in there. We have a lot of training targets, cardboard type stuff that we put up on the shelves.
So it's a storage is the other big issue?
Well, yeah, because a lot of the stuff that you'd like to store in there, you can't put down on the ground level because of the rain, the water.
In one year, when you discussed this, because I know you've presented it several times, wasn't there some talk about some people have made donations to the police department? Is that, am I remembering that wrong?
Well,
Or is there some other?
We sold both of the police boats, and that money was supposed to be earmarked towards that. Love to have donations, if anybody would like to donate, but that was the concept behind
Okay.
that.
So is that money there, or?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, both that money's there, and that would be, you've already designated that capital project.
So that would be some reduction of this 110?
Yes, we
or-
use that.
Okay, which is good.
So what's the square footage of this training facility upstairs you're talking about?
Well, I don't have any of the exacts. I had received two estimate bids last year from two contractors. And what you're talking about is about a 24 by 48 with an upstairs, which would be the same, obviously.
Heat and air conditioning and all that?
In the upstairs, yes, and plumbing.
Talking about a total of 2,000 square feet. 2,200
Approximately,
square
yes.
feet, half of which would be finished.
Correct.
Do you have in mind a building where that's directly accessible through the current building?
We'd like to do that. The problem is all of the electric, including all the new throw switches for the generator, are on that end, and that would cost a fortune, I'm guessing, to move all that around to the other side. So what we were proposing is possibly a short breezeway, so that you can immediately get to the building. Yeah,
Or theoretically, you could cover it.
that's right.
Also, one year, and this was before your time, there was a lot of discussion about having a place to put animals that we've picked up. You don't get involved in that anymore, do you? Or
Well,
do you?
we still do, but I'd like not to. First reason is I have a real problem putting dogs, especially if they're wet dogs, in the back of a police car.
Right.
And then 10 minutes later, transporting a prisoner or
Right.
someone,
I
human
remember that
being.
discussion.
So we've tried to get out of that, but at the same time, we get stray dogs, especially during the summer, and you really do need some place for them. We have that kennel that's out there, but it's all rusted. As a matter of fact, we're contemplating taking that down. And in the summertime, it's kind of hard to put a dog out there in the
So
sun.
how would that fit into this if you did it at all?
We're hopefully that we'll get a hold of Dare County's Animal Control, and they'll take care
And
of
they'll
it.
take care of it,
Yeah.
yeah.
We have small little crates. Worst case scenario, we put one of those in the garage, and it's a self-contained crate until
Right.
animal control can pick them up, yes.
Shall we move on to the second item, the third sergeant? Any questions of the chief on that? You want to expand
I
on
can
it
explain
at
that,
all?
sure. Couple of things. One is we're a small department, I realize that. Very limited in the amount of upper movement for officers to strive for, and I think that's important that you keep them interested in wanting to better themselves. Also, we have 2 sergeants currently, and there's 2 shifts that go unsupervised because of the lapse and layover of these 2 sergeants' days off. So we have 2 full shifts that are not supervised by a sergeant. And we also have found that the investigators, which we have 2 of right now, part-time, have become a lot more busy than they have in the past 2 or 3 years. And they need supervision. So right now, we have 1 sergeant that's overseeing all of that, and then one of the 2 sergeants is on call to cover some of those things. So really, it's important that the officers have supervision out there, obviously. So we're looking at a 3rd position from within to alleviate some of the unsupervised shifts, as well as assigning a supervisor to oversee the investigations and those types of things to make sure that everything is flowing smoothly there as well.
So could you, Chief, just do me a favor and tell me, like, the current shifts, not who person, but what the numbers, what the times are, and then how this is gonna change that numbers and times when we put another sergeant in?
Yeah, really not an awful lot will change. The officers still work 12-hour shifts. You have 1 shift that comes on at 6 a.m., off at 6 p.m., and then 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. With the exception of the investigators, when we get really hot, heavy cases, then that's officer is assigned to do the investigations. Right now, what we have is we have the sergeants, for the most part, we try to have them on a 12-hour shift. However, right now, because we're down to 1 sergeant, and we will be promoting very shortly, the sergeants, what we've tried to do is have them work a 12-hour shift starting at 2 p.m. till 2 a.m. during the school year, so that they're there in case an officer gets tied up and we have an issue over at the school or those types of things. Once school is out, then we change that shift from 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. so that we always have, so that we at least have a supervisor out till 3 in the morning. With this 3rd sergeant, we'll be able to take care of a full 12-hour shift and try instead of splitting the shifts.
And that's just a movement of somebody within the ranks?
That's correct.
And this will not lead to unnecessary hiring another police officer?
No, this has nothing to do with hiring another position. This is within the confines of the 11 officers that we're authorized to have. And this will be a promotion from within.
And how many officers per shift do we have?
Well, I can pass that around if that'll help. We have, on a perfect day, when no one's sick, no one's on vacation, no one's at school, that's the other reason.
Or one's in court.
Yeah. What y'all have to understand too is when the officers go to court, they could sit there literally for 8 hours until their cases are called. Judge Trevette has been extremely helpful where they're trying to streamline some of that. But currently, we have officers sit down there for 4 or 5 hours. And if they're sitting down there, well, we still have to cover the shifts somehow. So we try to schedule it on a day that they're not scheduled to come in, but that doesn't always work out. But for the most part, as you can see, what we'll pass around there is we have 2 officers assigned per shift, and along with a supervisor that oversees that shift. And then you have the investigator, and then we'll have the sergeant that's assigned to fill in for the days off of the other sergeants. Will also oversee the investigator as well.
So if you made one of those officers a sergeant, does that reduce the 2 officers at a shift?
No, what you have to understand, we have working sergeants. They don't sit in the office. We don't have that luxury like the big cities do. These officers actually cover shifts. These sergeants actually cover shifts as well. So it's not like they're just gonna go in and sit in the office and supervise. They're actually covering shifts. Like I said, in a perfect world, it'd be great to have 2 officers every day with a sergeant, but there's a lot of things that happen. Training, schools, sick, vacation time. So that when one of those officers does have to go to training, then that sergeant pretty much fills that slot for patrol.
When you said that you try to schedule the court time when they're off, does that become an overtime situation then, or?
No, what it is it's part of their shift. It'd be an 8-hour shift. And then,
Okay.
yeah, we try to eliminate as much overtime as we can.
I knew
And
that
to be
was your
honest with you, I
general
think we've
policy.
done pretty good at that.
You have?
Yeah.
I knew that was your general policy.
If we were unionized, I'd have to increase that by about $40,000.
And you say your corporal position, which you want to create, would cost an additional $2,000
Yes,
in salary.
yes. And that would be to bump the officer up to where he would be below a sergeant, but above the most senior officer. And that's
Patrol
something,
officer, senior patrol officer, corporal, sergeant,
that's correct, yes.
the order.
Yes. And this is something that we've worked, Peter and Bonnie have been very helpful, where we've tried to keep this separation so that you didn't have an officer making more than a supervisor. At one point, we did have that, and I had a real problem with that. No disrespect, but I tried to explain it to this MAPS lady, and she says, no, that's right. I says, no, it's not.
It's not.
Supervisor, no matter how many years on, they're still a supervisor. They have a lot more responsibility. And if you're gonna pay them less just because another officer has 20 years, there's no incentive to be a supervisor then, so.
You mentioned the 2,000 for the corporal. Do you know what the approximate number would be for the sergeant?
It's gonna be less than 2,000, I think.
So we're talking the ballpark, same 2,000?
Plus 2,000 plus bennies,
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
But, yeah, the base salary is approximately, I think it's about 1,300, somewhere in there. It's between that and $2,000. Because the officers that we're looking at that would be eligible to be promoted are already at the high end anyway, so it's not gonna be it's not gonna be a significant increase.
But they still have to make more than their senior.
That's correct. That's
Right.
correct.
I agree with
Yes.
that. Okay.
And the corporal also, just to let you know too, would oversee, for example, the community resource officer that we have during the summer. I've gotten down there COPS, which is the community-oriented policing activities. When we lost the one sergeant that went out and resigned, that officer was instrumental in doing a lot of the things at the elementary school, the Net Smart, and some of those types of things. This corporal will be plugged into that position as well, to oversee and conduct a lot of these different classes that we teach at the school.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate your time.
Did you discover what officer it was? Got such a.
I believe it was McKeever.
McKeever.
Yeah. He's always got a smile, so that made sense. So. Thank you.
I guess I shouldn't refer to something like that without explaining it, but a few days ago, one of our people, one of our residents, longtime residents, came to me with praise about the professionalism with which one of our officers handled the situation. And the situation was simply that he had committed to go to his daughter's home to do some work, and his car broke down. And he had a loaner vehicle, which from CETO, which wasn't impressive. And the daughter was away, so he went, parked his vehicle in my driveway, went into the house and left the door open on the ground floor. And the daughter came back, and she saw that situation, so she went to the neighbor next door, called 911. And McKeever came. He was very laudatory about his professionalism. And strange things happen. Fire department, our current contract calls for 3 cents. Is that correct, sir?
Same,
And it's 2 3/4.
I believe it's 2.75.
There's some factor in there regarding, valuation increases or something, or
It's-
something?
Well,
or
the
decreases or-
clause basically, we extrapolate the new rate to equal the old rate. You go up, we increase tax rate, it adjusts, is that correct? It stays the same?
Yeah, it's still, you know, I mean, the way it reads is 2 3/4 cents of whatever the tax rate is, is my understanding. I'm not to give them.
That's right, it doesn't, right, in other words, the new tax, the revenue neutral rate, it would be a new rate set, basically,
Right,
equal to
exactly.
2.75.
And it only goes up something if there's an increase in the number of houses or something or other, or has that nothing to do with it?
It goes up, if they request an increase and you approve an increase, then that's the new base for the next year.
But if it's set at if it's currently set at 2 3/4, and the tax base, which I really don't expect, but let's say the tax base went up by 5%, they would get 2.75% of that tax base.
No, they would get, if we set a new revenue neutral rate, it would be the rate that's revenue neutral to 2.75. So it would be an equal amount of money.
Okay, I think we're talking about two different things. We don't expect the tax base to increase
Right.
much, if any. It may decline, and that's why you're talking about tax neutral. I was just referring to the way the contract for the fire department is written. Let's say if the tax base went up, they would still get
That's correct.
2.75%, which would in fact increase their
Oh, yes.
their income.
Right,
Okay.
That's right, that's what I meant, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
2.75% to
I thought it was the tax
2.75
rate.
cents.
Cents in rate.
Cents, not percent.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misspoke
That's
there.
right. That's right. It's whatever the tax value is, it's 2.75 cents of value.
Right.
The levy, yeah. I mean, I can email y'all back out the contract, if you, it's online, but,
It's no problem.
Not a
yeah.
problem. Just,
Yeah.
just a point of clarification.
Yeah.
The last item the manager brought to us had to do with the CIP for fiscal year 14, streets rebuilt. And on this list, and we have honeysuckle.
Yeah, that is for this current budget year. I was gonna get to that in my manager's
Has
report.
been
yeah.
bid, and we'll hear from the manager about that at our next meeting, I think, about the award of that contract. We do need to, as quickly as we can get some idea of the cost of these items, get together as a CIP and prioritize. I look at this list and I just, I see $5 or $6 million we easily put in it. And with our set aside of 3 cents on the tax rate each year, $5 million is 10 years of work. We really have a challenge. Other than that, I don't have anything to suggest to the manager. Just keep plugging away.
I'm assuming something, which I always hate to do because you know what it does. But when we first started talking about phase 2 of the canal dredging, it was on the basis of we're gonna plan for it. There was no decision that we're really gonna go with it. And I know everybody is pushing for it. I'm not trying to bring up the subject to say we're not gonna go with it. But I think it would be really important for the CIP committee to come back and say what they're recommending, that yes, it does include the canal dredging, because that impacts the dollars and how we spend them, rather than maybe moving on the assumption that we're going to do the canal dredging. I guess I'd just like to hear some official discussion saying, yes, we recommend it, and this much is gonna be for the canal dredging, and this is what we then can recommend or afford for the CIP. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Well, not really, because I think that we were always talking about 3 cents for a strictly designed, in my mind, was basically a road discussion to try to get that infrastructure straightened out. I never thought that canal dredging was part of that picture. I always thought that canal dredging was a separate entity unto itself. I think it started that way, functioned that way, and continues to be that way, has to be financed differently, et cetera, in order to function. So I never,
The 3 cents was originally said for capital projects, with the assumption that we're going to do roads because it needed so badly. But I think if we go back and look at the words, as I recall it, it was 3 cents set aside for capital projects.
I would never, ever agree to, I will personally tell you, I'll never agree to using that 3 cents for canal work, as opposed to doing,
I guess
you
that's
know what
what
I'm saying, with the
that's what
roads.
we-
I mean, I would never do that, because,
I
yeah.
understand that, and I'm not trying to say we shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking we should be making it clear as a council that this is what we're approving. That's all I'm asking for, is to make sure that we're being very distinctive about
Yeah,
that
I always imagined
process.
that canal dredging was a separate moving entity that had to have its separate financing, its separate functioning, separate everything. Just like I also believe that it will be established these bridge costs, that in some case, those bridge costs are a separate kind of entity of bridge work, and that if the White Bridge had to get involved and replaced, then that would be a separate bridge entity concept, and that this other idea is the idea of trying to establish some kind of priority to get roads fixed in town. So that's why I've always seen it as a separate thing, and that's why I think in the CIP meetings, we always talk about continuing, our main topic is always roads. Because of that, I believe, I mean, that's why I think of it roads, because I always thought that that's the division of it all in my mind.
That makes it nice and clean, but the first
Let me ask you, Jody, are you suggesting that council, by some form of a resolution, make it clear that there's a distinction between canal dredging and other major projects and road rebuild
No,
and
I'm
3
not.
cents?
I'm not. That's what George is recommending. What I'm saying is, the 3 cents when we increased it was for capital projects. And at that
Yeah.
time, our emphasis was on roads.
Yeah.
So as much as we can do it, we can do that. All of these things you're talking about are capital projects. Bridges are all part of the capital project and planning. It's nice to think them separate. Tall Pine becomes different because we got involved in a grant program. So it did become a different kind of a funding suggestion. But if the Dick White Bridge came up to me, that would be a capital project. We would decide, do we fix that bridge versus doing some other road or some other capital expenditure? And I guess all I'm saying is when the CIP comes in, because they're looking at capital improvement, they should be making a recommendation that we do agree we should pursue the canals, and it'll be such amount of money. Therefore, we need to do a certain amount of this. That's all I'm just saying.
You want to see a capital improvement package that includes all capital improvement, and we will have that.
That's great, that's what I'm looking
Yeah.
for. Because that then does say that the 3 cents that's sitting there, whatever's in the capital reserve can be used for any capital
we will have
project.
that.
How do we want to do that?
Yeah, but that's, well, yeah, but I think your tendency is to, you're trying to drive that 3 cents into other things other than roads.
I'm
you
not
know,
trying
as
to drive it anywhere, I'm just trying to say it's there. And when the committee comes through with their report and recommendation to the council, that knowing that that funding is there, these are the capital projects we think we should be doing, and we're gonna pay for them this way. Well, that's actually the council's decision at that point. Some will be paid by the 3 cents, and it may end up being all roads, or may not be. But I'm not trying to drive anything anywhere, I'm just saying that's capital funding that we designate.
I believe, I don't want to speak for George, I'll speak for myself. The capital improvement program that we're putting together on the streets will be for not less than 3 cents.
Correct.
Right, I assumed that, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying, I just wanna make sure that we make it as clear as possible, because if we end up in the end of this thing saying to the citizens, we need to raise X amount of taxes, for whatever reason, and I certainly hope not, I'm not advocating that, I think we should be very clear as to what we're using, where we're using, and how we're making our priority decisions before we do that. And to
Yeah.
me, that's an important part.
I agree with that. I also believe that, I think that our people out there in the community who really couldn't care about a canal, you know, and really are looking, say, why in God's name do we have to pay out $2.7 million? To play that, I never need benefit, I need a road, I can't get down the street, my bones kill me every time I move, there are potholes everywhere, and you guys are fooling around with, with canal dredging. So, we have people now complaining that we build too many streets in Chickahook. You get that kind of
Exactly,
concept,
exactly.
and nobody else gets one, or nobody else gets repairs. So I think it's, I just, I have no problem with having the committee say, okay, this goes to there, and this goes here, and that goes to there. But I believe that we've been working well on these streets to get them some up, and there's a lot of more work to be done, and they need to be done, because I think that's what people care about, that live on those streets, as opposed to other things, so.
Well, see, you've answered what it is, because in mine, the committee could come back and say, forget canal dredging. We really want to spend this amount of money, we're going to put them all on streets. But the committee is saying, look, in prioritizing the work that needs to be done in this situation, this is the way we're prioritizing. This is the way we think it needs to be done. I'm just saying, we're making that statement, you're making that recommendation, because you could consider them as separate projects, but they're all capital improvements. And we need to be able to say, hey, we looked this through, these are the worst situations, we want to spend the 3 cents, if you will, over here on these, and we're going to go the biggest one to finish off the canal dredging this year.
But you still use that linguistic scenario of that 3 cents, we use this and then we can take it. And I'm still of the opinion that 3 cents road, there's canal dredging, its financing situation, you can call it capital gains, but that 3 cents sits here. Then you've got roads over here, you've got bridges that you're financing in some fashion, shape, or form, whatever way we can get money. Then you've got canal dredging over here, this gets financed in whatever shape, fashion, or form. It can be financed as 3 entities. I don't see the money transferring itself between those 3 entities. And you may call them umbrella-wise as capital improvement projects, but I don't see them as one big, huge lump pile that we decide, okay, we got 3 cents, do we take 3 cents and put the 3 cents into bridges? Do we take the 3 cents and put into canal dredging? Or do we do canal dredging and forget the roads, or we forget the bridges? I don't see that mix there. I see 3 separate things that need to be done, and at some point, we gotta juggle the funds in order to get all 3 done.
We're saying the same thing, but slightly in a different way. So I'm not going to extend this any longer.
I was about to say,
Yeah.
I'm having trouble distinguishing the differences between you two people.
The biggest difference is, the biggest difference for me is we did not say that the 3 cents was for roads. As a resolution, when we put it, we did not say that they were for roads. They were for capital projects. And we ended up spending even more than that.
I don't remember exactly how we stated it, but it was certainly my view at the time we did it, and I'm sure I spoke to it, that it's for roads.
This has come up the last 3 years, every time, and I would suggest clarifying that. We treated it for streets because I've heard the sentiments, but it does not say that, it says capital.
And I think we ought to go back and just check to see what we said it was for. And then as you say, if it should be something different, then we should do something different.
We can confirm it in the budget message.
Well, I've done that each year. The 3 cents has gone towards streets, and then there's been overage, all the other capital money we've had to contend with in the budget. But it does come up in y'all's discussion every year. Is it capital or is it streets?
I don't even see even to the concern about it, because I see things like $900,000 for Tall Pine Bridge. I see $300,000 for Trinity Bridge. I see whatever the millions you calculate over here for these streets over here. I see $2.7 million for the canals. I see a whole lot of bills out there. And it's like whether or not we pick and choose and play in numbers and pop it. To me, it's useless information. It's bureaucracy. The bottom line is, it's a big chunk of change that we got to pay for. Bottom line, if we want it all, and it's a simple concept to me.
Financing considerations aside, what I would like to see, because we tend to look at this document, and then we have something else that we look at regarding the canal dredging, and then there's something else regarding, say, new construction. I would just like to see everything encapsulated in one comprehensive document that indicates this is everything that we've discussed, and these are the estimated costs for each of these items, so that when we're deliberating, trying to consider how we're going to proceed, we can say, oh, wait a minute, we've got to remember this one, instead of it being another document over here that passes past our minds during the course of a discussion.
That'll be in the draft budget, with the exception of a couple of items that we all know would have to come out of fund balance during the year. That will be in the draft budget.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think this is a better idea. I mean, not that you don't need a budget and budget line and budget stuff, but I think that's a great idea. I think you put a portfolio together and you call it major expenses on your portfolio, and you list them all by tabs as to what the major costs are and what it is. And then that way you have it all in a portfolio system for yourself.
That's basically what I was trying to say I want to see from the CIP. That's what I started off with, that the CIP
That is a
committee
portfolio.
presents a piece of
That's the
paper
CIP.
and says, they're gonna do this for canals, they're gonna do this. That's what I was asking for.
Manager, I
And
think-
we're gonna put the building in.
I think we can make that happen.
Absolutely. That will be in the capital improvement plan lines, no question.
We don't want them in lines, we want a portfolio, a document, a piece of paper, a booklet,
I don't care about
lined up
portfolio,
booklet.
just so it's there.
Okay. Have we worked our way down to the manager's report? I think so.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Three things, basically. One is the Southern Shore Civic Association has again notified us that they will be conducting a meeting in March with property management firms that do business in Southern Shores seasonally, and also with our town receptionist and also our town planner and code enforcement officer to go over items of interest that the property management firm should be sending out to their clients for the year. And as you may recall, we have several things that Wes and Sheila go over with them, but as far as I'm concerned, my two hot spots are dogs and tents on the beach. So that's when we'll be preaching to the property management firms and the necessity of notifying their clients of the town's regulations on the beach. It seems like it boils down for me to those two things every year. And we spend an unbelievable amount of time dealing with those regulating and enforcing that portions of our ordinance. So hopefully this again will be a good meeting, as it has been every year.
In that connection, what's the status of the House bill? I forget who submitted it, to prohibit smoking on the beach.
It's been assigned to a committee, and that's all I know. I saw that. That bill would be local legislation authorizing local governments to ban smoking on the beach.
If they want to, or if they have to?
They want to.
They want to.
If they want.
It gives them the authorization to do that.
Was there a question with Riceville Beach then?
Yes. Riceville, I believe there's a couple of beaches down there that are pushing it, yes.
Because they passed an ordinance to ban it, then I guess, now it's questioned as to whether they have the authority to do that.
No, it's not questioned. I think probably they had local legislation themselves to do it. This bill would authorize all local governments to do that, as opposed to just one or two.
And,
Another ordinance that's unenforceable, doesn't make any sense to me.
It's a little tough to do.
Doesn't make any sense at all.
when you listed the items that were your top priorities as far as bringing up the property management groups and things like that, parking is no longer as much of an issue as it has?
It is parking, trash cans,
Oh, okay.
dogs on the beach, tents, noise,
Same old.
lighting, it's all of the above.
Same old, same old.
Yes, all of the above. Welcome back to the beach.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mayor touched on Honeysuckle, that project, and I wanted to update you. This week, we will be meeting with the current contractor on the street project that's finishing up right now, to try to go ahead and resolve the last payment due to the contractor for this project. The same contractor is the potential lowest and most qualified bidder for Honeysuckle. So we wanted to have that discussion and exercise with them on the current project before next meeting, which time I would be in a position to recommend to you that contractor for Honeysuckle. So that's the drill, the plan on that. As part of my report today, I did want to give council a couple of prices again on some projects that keep popping up. And if any council member wants to move that we amend the budget to consider these projects now, so be it. But I just wanted to make sure that you got some idea of what we were talking about. Next week, when we do, or the next meeting when we do Honeysuckle, we had proposed to bring also in the budget amendment for that a price for the Fern Drive entrance off of Juniper Trail, the rebuild that, which was approximately $25,700, and also bring to you at that time the Trinity Bridge repaving cost, which the cost to repave over what's there now. And that's probably more timely because of the weather, the cold, but I did want to bring these to you today in case there was a driving need on any council member's part to want to proffer to council to go ahead and get started on those. The Trinity Bridge repaving, we had priced two different ways. We had priced using asphalt and concrete curbing, and then we priced it using concrete over the bare area. The concrete would make after consulting with the engineer, the concrete would make a stronger bridge, a stronger decking. The problem there is if we run into a similar problem with voiding, it's not going to be flexible and we will not know that there's a void underneath. So the engineer is recommending that we stick with the asphalt paving for now on Trinity Bridge. The asphalt with concrete curb going back would still be approximately $24,000. I had explored with DOT to pave. They don't have a paving project anywhere small enough close by where we just add it to the same deal. So if we want to get started on that, we could go ahead and include that as an item coming out of fund balance. Probably next meeting would be time enough because it's still too cold to pave it right now. But if we went ahead and get started and grade it, et cetera, we can go ahead and do that if anybody on council would like to move that we do that. The third area,
Can we tie it in with Fern Drive?
yes, we could go ahead and do both of these
I
right
mean,
now.
can we tie it in and get a discount because we're doing Fern Drive and
Yes.
paving, so we can tie it in?
Probably I can negotiate that, absolutely.
Okay.
And I would, the more I had thought about it coming into this morning, probably since we're going to be meeting with the current contractor, that might be something that we can talk to them about at that time, is what they thought that they could do it for if we combine the two. So that will be we'll be meeting with them this week.
There's one other thing about that bridge, is the state looking at it to see whether it's having issues again or anything, or is it just figured out that it's solved the problem and it should be fine?
No, we can get it inspected constantly. I mean, it is a culvert bridge, but I mean, right now it's packed in, but that's not to say that
But
we
it's
won't.
not bending, distorting, it's not doing anything at this present point? We know?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, I'm not in daily contact with them, but
They put in tiebacks,
Right.
4 tiebacks on it, which weren't quite as extensive as the original bridge, but presumably the engineer decided they were adequate.
If we do this, does this reduce what we were gonna pay the state?
no.
So
does
in other
not.
words, we're fixing their problem and on
We-
top of it, we're paying an additional.
That's not the way they take it. This is our problem. They say it's our problem. They're doing it for us. It's that type of arrangement. We got them to do it to come in cheaper than we would if we had to pay for it ourselves. And basically, it's an estimate cost plus type contract is what it is.
Interesting.
Yes, that's how we got it done at the price we got it done. Okay, so those are Fern Drive, Trinity Bridge. We can either do something today, or we can wait till next meeting when we approve Honeysuckle Trail and try to incorporate those into the same budget amendment. The other area is the Wax Myrtle East Dogwood area that has come up in discussion by a citizen, and I believe Councilmember Sanders had some communication to me about this area, and we looked at it. The corner of Wax Myrtle and East Dogwood, there's a pavement patch problem there, and the cost to fix that or enhance that and then put curb and gutter there, if we wanted to do that, is $3,400. Also, the cost to remove on East Dogwood of 1,700 linear feet of line that exists there now and lay out and restripe it with glass beads is $1,955. And then we got a price on installing DOT-style arrows and stop bars with glass beads at NC-12 and East Dogwood for $360, being a total of $5,715. We cannot find that in the current Public Works and street budget. So if we wanted to proceed with that in this budget year, that would be the budget amendment amount that a council member would need to move for if we wanted to do that.
And maybe council should realize when we drove that we figured out that corner of Wax Myrtle was actually caused by traffic driving into the sand and busting off the corners of the asphalt and kept doing, and that's what the issue is. So that's why the thought is that you put the curb in there in the gutter and stop people from driving across the road and into the sand and destroying that corner. So that's that. And I guess it's striped with glass beads. You're talking about reflectors.
Yes.
Okay.
I will comment on one point. We did move the stop sign closer to the street and where people were cutting in. So the stop sign came closer to the street, and we're also going to relocate the street sign pole in that corner as well. So that'll prevent a lot of the way off
Is
road.
this in Wax Myrtle?
That's at the corner of East Dogwood and Wax Myrtle, coming from the south towards East Dogwood and taking a right. It's that problem.
Speaking of signage, who's responsible for the signs over the road at East Dogwood? Because that sign has never said East Dogwood. That sign has always said just Dogwood. It doesn't differentiate, it's
The one on
never
12?
differentiated east, west, north, or south.
The one on Route 12,
Yep.
DOT put those up,
I missed an E.
yeah.
I'll check on that
I
with
think-
DOT.
But what I don't understand is why would we consider doing this now? We had one citizen complain about this item. It's not an emergency. It's not like the road's falling apart, and I would almost say that every time we get a request from somebody, we're gonna go out and find money to put on to pay for it. Why wouldn't this be part of this review for prioritization as opposed to doing it now?
Can I address some of it? This was one of those situations where I didn't mean to get that involved in it, but the part of the problem there actually had to do with sight lines and impressions rather than the road itself, along with some repairs that the town has done in the past that actually aggravated, in my opinion, aggravated the situation. It is crumbling very badly there, and people are trying to use asphalt, which I believe was never intended as part of the road. I believe what's happened in the past is, as the edge of the road deteriorated, we continued to patch it and expand the apron over no road bed, just over sand. And part of that was due to the fact that because the stop sign was so far off, I think people had a peculiar perception of what that intersection was supposed to be. So they had a tendency to run off the right side of the road and dig a hole and crumble the edge of the pavement. So it is in pretty bad shape right now and needs, whether it's done now or it's added to the list, which actually, when I went through this list, I made a note to myself to send Peter an email asking about this. Also, we're coming up on the summer season, and the striping, I believe that he's talking about at $1,955, includes the striping for the walkway that currently runs down East Dogwood, which is in need of renewal so that cars and people stay separated. So he's dealing with several things, including the fact that when you reach the bottom of East Dogwood, you have this, I don't think the road was ever intended actually to be 2 lanes there, one straight and one turn, although there's an advantage to that. The markings there are not very plain. Sometimes you end up with somebody that's going straight to the beach access, and cars are stacking up behind them because they're not allowing space for a turn, where we have indicated there is a turn. So whether it's done now or later, I don't really have a feeling about that. The sooner the better.
Well, I guess I personally see it, that this is sort of in the eye of the beholder. I went down and checked this when we had the citizen complain about it. And there's some ruts on the side, there are some things that are wrong with it, but it's not bad. I mean, I'll go back to what I said earlier about this one where we repair the potholes all the time. It just doesn't, it's in the eye of the beholder. And I don't quite see it as being something that needs to be done right now. With Fern Drive, they've had years that's been a problem for them. It comes down and there's a dipping problem with it. And if we can come up with a joint fee for Trinity and Fern Bridge, that would be, if we're doing them at the same time, it would make sense to me. So if you need something like this, I would move that we urge the manager to go ahead and negotiate a fee for Fern Drive and Trinity Bridge, and we can put it with a budget amendment with Honeysuckle as one, as you suggested. And I included that we do not do wax myrtle. We make that part of the consideration from a capital improvement plan and prioritize it in the way we normally would approve such a project.
Could we include the striping and the turn indications at the bottom of the hill? The lane divisions?
$360. I mean, I'm not gonna argue about that. If that makes a big difference, I would leave that to the town manager.
What about the striping?
Well, but the striping, the only thing wrong with that striping is it's crooked.
Right.
I mean, so we're gonna, again, I go back to other streets that have these things that are going on that really need to be worked on. We're sending a precedent to citizens, and I guess we should either get a second or not before we keep discussing this.
Okay.
But the citizens haven't, they send a letter and all of a sudden it's becoming top priority. We gotta do something immediately. I don't understand that. So I guess we need a second to the motion before we actually really discuss it any further.
We don't have a motion yet.
I did, I just made one.
Yes, you did.
I made a motion to authorize the town manager to proceed with developing a price, and a combined price if he can, for Fern Drive and Trinity Bridge, and bring that amount in a budget amendment to the next meeting. And that we do not include wax myrtle at this point. We give that back to the CIP as a review as to how we prioritize the work that's required on that. That was my motion.
I'll second.
Okay, so, I'm a little bit confused. I understand we don't do the wax myrtle idea and put that back in, because that also is a bothersome thing to me too, including Fern, because I think Fern should be on the list. I think that should be on the list, and then we sit down and figure out what we do, which we may be thinking about doing a bunch of little things instead of one big large road. We'll see how that all works out. But, so I understand that. My impression was on the East Dogwood line, I thought that was going down, the line going down all the way down to 12. And I thought that was that quasi walking path that people walk in the road. And that needed to be repaired with reflectors, et cetera, because do we still have any, are they all reflectorized perfectly down the road, or do we have half the reflectors missing, or to make it as a safety issue?
There never
There
were
never were
reflectors.
reflectors.
Okay, that's right, so we haven't put, all right,
So
so,
we're talking about a
We painted
reflective
a line
stripe.
down there
Right.
to provide a separation.
right. And to me, I've always had a problem with the fact that the line is not gonna do much for me when I get that bumper stuck in my rear end as I'm trying to walk down that road, because I don't look at the line. But maybe reflectors might be slightly safer for people, especially if it gets dusky, a little bit darker, et cetera. So I don't have an objection about doing that when it comes to safety of individuals and not being struck by a vehicle. Ultimately, they shouldn't be walking on the road anyway. They should be actually in a separate path off the road, walking elsewhere. So I don't know about that, but I have no problem in putting fern and putting myrtle, wax myrtle into that, and then having that repaired under normal circumstances. So I don't know. I mean, did you say yes to throw in for the things, or not to throw in your?
I excluded in my motion the wax myrtle to say that should go
Right.
back to the committee. What I was saying is on Fern Drive and Trinity was to authorize the manager to go back and see if he can come up with a reduced rate by doing them
Okay.
both at the same time.
All right.
And presenting that at the next meeting. And if he has a budget amendment at that point with Honeysuckle, he could bring it to us. So it was just to say,
Okay.
authorizing him to negotiate a fee which could say, hey, maybe we ought to do them both at once.
So B and C is okay. I mean, B being East Dogwood with the reflectors and the glass beading, is that okay then, B and C?
I did
No?
not include that.
Okay, all right.
I'm hearing you and you speak in terms of including that project. Any of you, either of you want to offer an amendment?
I made the motion.
I know you did.
But
Oh, you mean you want them to say?
we're
how
still
they
in
would amend it?
discussion.
Well, they're
I would like to,
arguing essentially against a motion.
I'd like to say something further involving the discussion. And that is the striping and the markings, in my mind, are related to vehicular and pedestrian safety. Although there were no reflectors, actually there may have been a few
Yeah, I think there
originally,
was,
spaced like 50 feet
Yeah.
apart. And the stripe was put in there rather haphazardly. I'm assuming that if we pay $1,955 for striping, that it won't be quite so haphazard or appear as the way the original stripe did. That was an attempt by Public Works to borrow equipment and do the striping themselves. The thing is before that stripe was there, people walked haphazardly down the street. Vehicles and people were in the same apparent lanes. And after the stripe was put in, people were jogging, bicycling, walking, had a tendency to keep to the right of it, while the cars actually had a visual clue as to where they were supposed to be. At times, that street, because of the way it's designed, people attempt to make it 4 lanes. Because it appears to be a divided highway. But in any event, I believe that stripe has enhanced pedestrian safety, and there is confusion currently at the base of the hill as to where cars are supposed to place themselves. In either a left or straight turn or a right turn. And it just causes confusion, and one of these days, possibly some road rage. So I would like to see the motion amended to include those 2 items.
Do you have a second to the motion to amend?
I'll second.
Okay.
I have
So
a,
why don't we just, it was in the second. There was a motion sitting on the floor.
Yes, but we have a motion to amend.
I
So
think
all we're talking about is a motion that just says, we agree to amend it,
To amend your,
okay?
well, he
What
said.
if I don't want to amend my
point
motion?
of order, I believe the
Yeah.
one who makes the motion is the only one that can agree to an amendment.
Right.
Yeah, I don't want
What
to
do you
amend
say?
it.
I believe that the one who makes the motion is the only one who can agree to the amendment.
You're right. That's right.
Okay.
That's my motion, and I'm saying not to amend it. So it becomes a case of voting.
Okay, you heard the discussion.
can I have one more question to ask Jody? On your amendment, because I don't understand it, to Fern Drive, so that we can see whether or not there's I guess we inferred that we'll improve 25,000 if they can get a discount, but if they can't get a discount, what happens then?
I'm authorizing the manager to take a look at seeing if that is possible. When he brings the budget amendment, we will then vote on saying, are we gonna do that or not
Okay,
gonna do that?
all right, okay.
Mr. Mayor, town attorney's not here. May I make a comment? Way I understand where you are, parliamentary.
Yes, you may.
There is a motion to amend the previous motion, and it has been seconded. You don't, even though you don't agree with it, it's already been made. You can agree to a friendly amendment, but this is not a friendly amendment. So he's made a motion, it's been seconded, it's on the floor, ready for it to vote priority over your motion.
So does that then changes, okay.
If this motion passes, then it does what you don't want to happen. If it doesn't pass, then the mayor would call the vote on your motion. But if this motion passes, it basically includes everything on this list for East Dogwood and Wax Myrtle.
Everything that's on the
With
list?
these? No.
Okay, well, it includes,
I have, in my motion, I have only included the stripers and markings.
which is how much?
See,
The $19.55 for the striping
Okay,
and the $360 estimate for the markings. Okay, I have not included the rebuild work needed for the end of the street. We'll propose later that either by email or whatever, that be included in any consideration by the CIP.
so the amount of $2,315 would come on, if the motion passes, as I understand it, $2,315 would come on the budget amendment that we will present next meeting.
The legitimate motion to amend is on the floor. All those in favor?
I'm sorry, I did not hear.
Your motion to amend is a legitimate motion
Okay,
and has been seconded. And I'm now putting it to the vote.
okay.
All those in favor of the motion to amend, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
no,
His motion to amend carried. Now we're back to the original motion. Any further discussion?
No.
And the original motion is that, okay, I got it, not a problem.
now it
I got
confuses
it.
me. Based
You're
on what you
confusing
said,
me.
that confuses me.
Well, the original motion now is to authorize me to bring you a budget amendment that would tack on to the Honeysuckle Trail budget amendment a cost for Fern Drive, Trinity Bridge, and $5,715 worth of work for East Dogwood, Wax Myrtle. That is as amended, the original motion as amended is before you now.
What was the difference between what you just said and what he said?
Not to include the $3,400.
Stan, I'm sorry, the
Okay.
2,315, I apologize.
2,315. Okay.
How's that different from what he said when he would amend it?
That's
He
not,
amended it.
that's not any different, because his
Then
amendment
why didn't
passed.
we vote on the second amendment? Didn't they just?
Because you
knock
have,
mine out?
because that's the original motion,
No, you're still in
parliamentary.
The original motion, Jody, has to be acted upon
Yes, because now it's.
as amended. Your motion as
So
amended.
we're voting twice for the same thing.
Basically.
No, not quite, because you didn't have your beads in.
I understand what you're saying, but what I said was
Right.
wiped out and replaced by
Jody?
what we, wait a minute, was replaced by what we just voted on.
Understand, that's true.
His amendment didn't cover the bridge or firm.
We still need to vote
Only
on that.
addressed to one part of the original motion.
Okay, go ahead.
We have to
I'm
act
not going
on the
to-
original motion as amended. And as amended excludes $3,400. Everyone understand?
I do.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, that concludes my manager's report.
Gee, thank you.
Before we leave this, there's nothing in the current year's budget in Public Works for minor repair.
There is a line in there, but we put a minimum, the amount we put in there that cannot cover this. There is an amount in there,
Over this.
right, that cannot cover this, what's left in it.
The total package.
I mean, I'm sure I could look and find $360
Cover
somewhere.
Wax Myrtle and East Dogwood?
No, sir, that's why I brought it to you today. I mean, I could probably find $360 somewhere, but we've depleted most of the work lines out of that.
It would seem to me to make a lot of sense to include in your public works budget an item of minor repair sufficient to handle things like have just brought to us.
Absolutely, I totally agree.
We also have on this engineering report, 3 that just say pothole repair. Could they be handled in a minor budget item rather than on the CIP?
Well, yes, and yes and no.
Yeah, I hear council loud and clear on that, and we will bring in the proposed budget this year and a significantly increased line for street repair potholes.
Minor repair.
But there is.
That's been in the
But I
line.
think this cautionary tale here is the fact that pothole repair is an interesting item, because it's not just get a better, some cold mix, throw it in there and repair it like that. It's like you've done that 15 times on that pothole and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Now you're cutting out the street and now you're replacing the whole baseline, and somebody professional is now doing it to now repair that pothole. So that's the differential in the pothole repair concept.
That's the kind of thing I was talking about on Hillcrest, and then because we need cut out after so much of just filling in, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Mr. Manager. A lively discussion.
Welcome, sir.
Mayor, we are going to recess after council has a chance to say something. And then take up the retreat items. It's 11:25 almost. What is your pleasure, council? Shall we, pardon me? I didn't hear you, Carrie.
I'm sorry.
He's gonna say,
Town manager.
Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
I'm sorry. We have prepared to bring lunch in,
You have prepared lunch
to be brought in,
to be brought in. At what time is that going to happen?
11, 12 o'clock? It's here. It's
We're
here.
ready. Break and eat whatever
Okay.
y'all want.
Okay. Council comment.
Have a comment. Thank you.
I have none.
Jody?
nope.
No further.
We are in recess till after lunch.
I think it's the
Let's say we will